There is something happening in your kitchen right now that most people have never been warned about. Not by their doctor, not by their parents, and certainly not by the microwave manufacturer whose appliance made this habit so easy in the first place. Every day, millions of people take last night's leftovers, press a button, and eat what comes out without a second thought. It feels practical. It feels fine. It has always felt fine. But inside certain foods, when heat is applied a second time, a silent transformation takes place. A chemical shift, a structural change. Something that was safe yesterday becomes something that your body was never designed to handle the way you are now forcing it to. This is not about food that smells bad or looks off. This is about food that looks completely normal, smells perfectly acceptable, and tastes exactly the way you expect it to. The problem is invisible, and because it is invisible, most people have been exposing themselves to it for years without ever connecting it to how they feel, how their digestion behaves, or what their cells are quietly processing every single time they hit reheat. There are 4 foods in particular that science has been studying for decades, foods so common that they appear in nearly every household on the planet. And when these foods are reheated under ordinary conditions, they undergo changes that create compounds your body recognizes as threats. In some cases, those compounds have been directly linked to cellular damage. In others, they trigger internal responses that you feel only indirectly, as bloating, nausea, fatigue, or inflammation that you keep blaming on something else entirely. What you are about to understand is not a fringe theory. It is rooted in real biochemistry, in the way molecular structures behave under temperature changes, and in what happens to specific nutrients, proteins, and bacteria when they go through a second heat cycle without the right conditions. By the end of this, you will look at your refrigerator and your microwave very differently, not with fear, but with the kind of understanding that actually protects you. Let us start with the first food, and it is one that surprises almost everyone who hears it. Rice. Not fried rice, not rice with sauces or added ingredients, plain cooked rice. The rice you made last night and left in the pot, or transferred to a container, or let cool on the stove before putting it away. That rice, when reheated the following day or even hours later, carries a risk that most people have never been told about. And the dangerous part doesn't happen during the reheating, it happens during the cooling. Here is what is taking place. Rice contains dormant bacterial spores called Bacillus cereus. These spores survive the original cooking process because they are extraordinarily heat-resistant. They do not die when you boil rice, they simply wait. When the rice begins to cool at room temperature, those spores activate. They come back to life in the warm, moist environment that cooked rice provides, and they begin producing toxins. The longer the rice sits at room temperature, the more toxins accumulate inside it. This process is happening on a microscopic level that no amount of looking, smelling, or tasting will reveal. Now, when you reheat that rice, a common assumption is that the heat kills whatever is inside it. And yes, the reheating kills the bacteria themselves. But here is the critical piece most people miss. The toxins those bacteria already produced are heat stable. They do not break down when you microwave the rice. They survive the second heat cycle entirely intact. So what ends up in your bowl looks like normal rice, smells like normal rice, and has no living bacteria in it whatsoever, but it contains active toxins that go directly into your digestive system and begin their work. The result is what food scientists call Bacillus cereus food poisoning, and it is far more common than most people realize. The symptoms typically appear within 1 to 5 hours of eating. Nausea comes first, often followed by vomiting or diarrhea. Most people assume they have a stomach bug or that something else they ate was off. They almost never think about the rice. They almost never make the connection, and so they keep doing it, again and again.
The correct way to handle leftover rice is to cool it as quickly as possible after cooking, ideally within 1 hour, then refrigerate it and eat it within 1 day. If you are going to reheat it, make sure it is piping hot all the way through, not just warm in spots. But if that rice has been sitting in your fridge for 2 days or more, the smarter choice is to let it go. The risk is simply not worth it for a food that takes minutes to make fresh. Now let us move to the second food, and this one carries a different kind of concern, less about bacteria and more about what happens to the chemistry of protein itself. Chicken. Specifically, chicken that has already been cooked, allowed to cool, and then reheated. Chicken is one of the most consumed proteins on the planet, and leftover chicken is a staple in millions of households. But when chicken is subjected to a second round of high heat, something happens at a molecular level that changes the nature of that protein in a way your body does not easily manage.
When protein-rich meat is heated, especially to high temperatures, it undergoes a process that forms what are known as heterocyclic amines. These are chemical compounds that form when amino acids and creatine, which are naturally present in muscle meat, react at high heat. This is already a consideration with the first cook, but the concern amplifies significantly with reheating because the protein structure of chicken that has already been broken down by cooking is now more vulnerable to these reactions the second time around. Here is the important distinction. When you grill or fry chicken, the outside is exposed to intense heat, while the inside remains more protected. When you reheat that same chicken, you are applying heat throughout a structure that is already fully cooked, which means the proteins throughout the entire piece are now reacting to that heat again. The formation of heterocyclic amines increases, and heterocyclic amines are not a minor concern. Multiple studies over the past 30 years have linked high consumption of these compounds to increased risk of colorectal, pancreatic, and prostate cancers. Now, this does not mean that eating reheated chicken once will give you cancer. That is not how it works. What it means is that every time you reheat chicken to high temperatures, you are creating compounds that your DNA repair mechanisms have to work to address. Do this occasionally, and your body handles it. Do this regularly over years, and the cumulative exposure becomes a genuine factor in long-term cellular health. There is another layer to the chicken problem that is separate from the chemical one. The protein structure in reheated chicken also becomes harder to digest. The second heat cycle causes protein chains to tighten and reorganize in ways that your digestive enzymes struggle to break down efficiently. This means more undigested protein reaching the lower intestine, which contributes to gas, bloating, and discomfort that you might not always connect back to the chicken. If you want to go deeper into exactly how your daily food habits are affecting your organs and cellular health, there's a complete guide in the pinned comment below called Body Hidden Signals. It breaks down what happens inside your body, meal by meal, habit by habit, in clear and genuinely useful detail, worth looking at after this. The safest way to use leftover chicken is cold, in salads, wraps, or sandwiches where no second heat cycle is applied. If you must reheat it, do so gently at lower temperatures, avoid the microwave on high settings, and never reheat it more than once. Now, the third food on this list is one that most people would never expect to find here. It feels so pure, so fundamentally healthy, that putting it in the same conversation as cancer risk feels almost wrong. But the science is clear, and ignoring it does not change what is happening inside your body. Spinach. And more broadly, leafy green vegetables that are high in nitrates. Spinach, celery, beets, and certain lettuces all fall into this category. But spinach is the most widely cooked and reheated, so it serves as the clearest example. Here is what happens. Spinach naturally contains high levels of nitrates. Nitrates are not harmful in their original form. They are compounds that exist in many vegetables, and even in your own saliva.
Your body manages them well when they are consumed raw or freshly cooked and eaten immediately. But when spinach is cooked and then allowed to cool and sit, particularly at room temperature, the nitrates in it begin converting to nitrites through the action of bacteria that are naturally present on the vegetable. Nitrites are a more reactive form of the same compound, and under the right conditions, particularly when exposed to heat a second time, nitrites can react with proteins in the spinach to form nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are on a very short list of compounds that consistently appear in the research literature as carcinogenic. They are the same compounds formed in processed meats that have been linked to colorectal cancer, and the same compounds that prompted health warnings on cured bacon and smoked deli meats. When spinach is reheated, particularly at high temperatures, this conversion accelerates dramatically. This is not a hypothesis. The European Food Safety Authority has explicitly flagged reheated spinach as a source of elevated nitrosamine exposure. Germany's Federal Institute for Risk Assessment warned against reheating baby spinach specifically because infants are particularly vulnerable to nitrite toxicity. The concern is real, it is documented, and it is almost never discussed in casual conversation. There is an additional layer here that matters for people who eat spinach for its iron content. The reheating process also affects the oxalic acid in spinach, causing it to bind more aggressively with minerals like iron and calcium, which paradoxically makes these nutrients even less bioavailable after reheating than they were in the freshly cooked version. So you are not only creating a potentially harmful compound, you're also dramatically reducing the nutritional benefit you thought you were getting. The correct approach with spinach and similar greens is to cook only what you will eat immediately. If you have leftovers, eat them cold or at room temperature, never reheated. Your body does not need the warmth of that second cooking cycle to absorb what spinach offers. What it does not need are the nitrosamines that come with it. Now we arrive at the fourth food, and this one is perhaps the most universally misunderstood of all four, because its danger is so specific to a particular reaction that most people have no framework to even recognize it. Eggs.
Specifically, cooked eggs that are reheated. Not hard-boiled eggs eaten cold, not raw eggs being cooked for the first time. Cooked eggs, scrambled, fried, or as part of a cooked dish that are then heated again from a cold or room temperature state. Eggs are built around protein in a way that makes them uniquely sensitive to the heat reapplication problem. When an egg is first cooked, its proteins denature, meaning they unfold from their natural coiled structure and set into the texture you expect. This is normal. This is cooking. But when those already denatured proteins are heated again, they undergo a secondary restructuring that creates compounds that are both harder to digest and, in some forms, actively inflammatory. There is a specific concern with sulfur-containing amino acids in eggs. Eggs are rich in methionine and cysteine, two amino acids that contain sulfur. When these amino acids are exposed to repeated high heat, they can oxidize and form sulfur-based compounds that trigger an inflammatory response in the gut lining. This is why many people who regularly eat reheated scrambled eggs or reheated egg-based dishes report digestive discomfort, particularly a feeling of heaviness, excessive gas, or mild nausea that they often attribute to other causes. But the risk that places eggs firmly on this list is more specific than general digestive discomfort. Research into protein oxidation has shown that repeatedly heated egg protein produces compounds called protein carbonyls, which are markers of oxidative stress at the cellular level. When your body processes oxidized proteins, the process generates free radicals, which are unstable molecules that damage cell membranes, interfere with DNA replication, and promote the kind of chronic cellular stress that, over time and with repeated exposure, creates conditions under which abnormal cell growth becomes more likely. This does not mean that one reheated egg is going to cause immediate harm.
Your body has antioxidant systems that exist precisely to handle oxidative stress. But those systems have limits, and every exposure adds to the cumulative load. When eggs are a daily part of your diet and you are consistently reheating them, you are consistently adding to that oxidative burden in a way that goes well beyond what fresh eggs create. There is also a straightforward bacterial concern with eggs that mirrors the rice situation. Improperly stored cooked eggs that sit for more than a couple of hours before reheating can accumulate salmonella bacteria in ways that survive brief or uneven microwave heating. Unlike Bacillus cereus toxins, salmonella itself does not produce heat-stable toxins, which means thorough reheating does kill the bacteria. But most people do not reheat eggs to a truly safe core temperature. They heat them until they feel warm, which is often not the same thing.
The simplest rule with eggs is that they are best eaten immediately after cooking. If you need a meal prep strategy that involves eggs, consider hard boiling them and eating them cold, which avoids the reheating problem entirely while still giving you the nutritional value. Scrambled eggs, fried eggs, and egg-based dishes should be made fresh and eaten right away. The 2 minutes you save by reheating are not worth the internal conversation you force yourselves into every time you do. Now, stepping back from all 4 of these foods, there is something important to understand about how these risks actually work inside your body. Your body is not passive in this process. It is constantly scanning, filtering, and responding. When you eat something that contains harmful compounds, your immune system activates. Your liver processes what it can. Your gut barrier works to keep certain molecules from entering the bloodstream. These are extraordinary systems, and they were built for exactly these kinds of challenges. But there is a principle in physiology that is easy to overlook when you feel fine in the short term. These systems have a threshold. They have a bandwidth. Every time you consume reheated rice with active toxins, every time you eat oxidized proteins from reheated chicken or eggs, every time you introduce nitrosamines from reheated spinach, you are drawing on a resource that has limits. When you draw on it occasionally, the body recovers fully. When you draw on it consistently across years of daily habits, the systems begin to show signs of strain. Inflammation becomes more persistent. Digestive function becomes less efficient, cellular repair becomes slower, and the silent signals begin. The silent signals almost never point back to the exact source. You feel more tired after meals than you used to. Your digestion has changed, but you cannot pinpoint when. You get sicker easily than you did a few years ago. Your energy is inconsistent in ways that do not seem connected to sleep or stress. These are not dramatic symptoms. They are quiet, gradual shifts that accumulate so slowly that most people normalize them entirely. They assume it is aging. They assume it is just how they feel now. What they rarely consider is the cumulative effect of small, repeated chemical exposures that their body has been managing silently for years. The foods you eat every day, including how you prepare them and handle them, are a constant input into your body's chemistry. And chemistry does not care whether something feels harmless. It responds to what is actually present. This is why the 4 foods discussed here matter so much. They are not exotic toxins from rare sources. They are the leftovers on your shelf and the items on your weekly grocery list. They are the things you heat up on a Tuesday morning without thinking about it because you've done it 100 times before. And your body has been responding every single time.
Rice that cools before properly stored. Chicken reheated to the point where its proteins form new compounds. Spinach that went from the fridge to the microwave. Eggs scrambled last night and warmed up this morning. None of these feel like risk. None of these look like risk. But inside, the biology, the response is real, and it is measurable. The changes you can make from this point forward are genuinely simple. Cool rice quickly, store it cold, and eat it within a day. Use leftover chicken cold rather than reheated. Cook spinach fresh and serve it immediately. Make eggs fresh and eat them right away. These are not difficult adjustments. They are small shifts in how you handle ordinary food that meaningfully reduce the chemical load you ask your body to process day after day. And when you apply these kinds of changes consistently, something interesting happens. Not in a week, not dramatically, but over months, many people report that the quiet symptoms they had normalized begin to ease. The post-meal fatigue softens. The digestive irregularities become less frequent. The low-level inflammation that was never dramatic enough to investigate stops being a background noise. Not because one habit cured a condition, but because the cumulative reduction in harmful inputs gives the body's own systems the space they need to do what they were built to do. Your body has been communicating with you this entire time. Every time it struggled to process something it was not designed for, it sent a signal. Most of those signals were too quiet, too ordinary, too easy to dismiss. Understanding the chemistry behind what you eat is one of the most direct ways to start interpreting those signals correctly. The 4 foods in this video are a starting point. There are other daily habits, other common foods, other ordinary routines that trigger hidden responses inside your body in ways most people never learn to connect. The science is there. It has been there for decades. It just rarely makes it into the conversations you have at the breakfast table or in the kitchen at the end of a long day. That is exactly what the Body Hidden Signals Guide in the pinned comment is designed to change. It goes well beyond what one video can cover, tracing what happens inside your organs through the course of a normal day, based on the habits most people share. If this video gave you a new way of seeing your daily food choices, that guide takes the same lens and applies it to your full daily routine. Your body has been doing its best with what you have been giving it. Now you know how to give it something better.